And our final speaker is Yvonne Siu Turner, who graduated from Colby in 2003 with a major in international studies, now renamed global studies, as you know, and a minor in Italian. As the senior manager for corporate resources and programs at the Points of Light Corporate Institute, Yvonne is responsible for developing the Institute's suite of resources on employee volunteerism. Previously, she served as the marketing manager for A Billion Plus Change, which was a national campaign housed and managed by Points of Light that in 2013 inspired more than 500 companies to pledge $2 billion of skill-based support to communities, the largest commitment of pro bono service in history.
Good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Siu Turner, and I also wanted to just thank Laura Meter and the language departments and the global studies departments for organizing this career panel. I think I'm probably going to kind of reiterate Kenny's main points in terms of my career path and the influence that language studies at Colby played in my career path. But I minored in Italian, and after I graduated in 2003, I moved to Washington, D.C., and I got my master's in international development from American University School of International Service. And since then, I've been working in the nonprofit sector. I worked in the international development arena, and now I work for Points of Light, which is the largest organization in the world dedicated to volunteer service. And Points of Light, it's a wonderful organization. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Points of Light, but it was founded by President George H.W. Bush when he referred to 1,000 points of light in his inaugural address in 1989. He described volunteers as 1,000 points of light in a broad and peaceful sky. And so today it's the largest organization in the world that mobilizes and empowers people to make a difference in their communities through volunteer service. And there are different action networks at Points of Light, and I work for the Corporate Institute. So each action network interfaces with a different stakeholder group in society. And so we have a group called Generation On, and there are our youth service enterprise that operates out of New York, and there's AmeriCorps alums, and it's a networking group for AmeriCorps alums. We've got our Civic Accelerator, which is a startup accelerator for civic ventures, and the Corporate Institute. And so we work with companies and we help them design and implement corporate volunteer programs. And so in my role as the Senior Manager for Corporate Resources and Programs, I design our training, our corporate training content, our professional development webinars for corporate social responsibility professionals. I create our toolkits and case studies and just learning materials for CSR professionals that are wanting to improve or build corporate service programs. And I did not know that I was going to end up in this field, this job, when I was at Colby. But my language studies really, as Kenny said, it really improved my ability to communicate in terms of verbal communication, written communication. And I can't overemphasize how important that is. I think that people say communication has been important, but when you get into the working world, and you especially work with businesses, and especially in the nonprofit sector, being able to communicate persuasively and effectively and concisely is very, very important, not in terms of just being a professional, but also in management and leadership. And so learning how to learn a language and learning how to practice a language is super, super important. Studying Italian, I took 3 years of Latin before I studied Italian, but it really enriched my study abroad experience. I studied abroad in Florence in 2001, 2002, and I flew out of JFK a week before September 11th, and so I was in Florence in Italy for a week before September 11th happened, and at that point I couldn't speak the language very well, couldn't understand the language very well, and I went with the Syracuse University program, and we were all in the villa, kind of just like gathered around the TV, wanting to know what had happened. And if you watch Italian news, they speak really fast, and so I couldn't understand what was happening. All I could see was the 2 twin towers burning, and it was I think Syracuse wanted to cancel the program at one point. They decided eventually not to send us back home, but they told us to keep a low profile, which we did. And after that, it was so powerful to see all those shop owners in Italy. They wrote posters and they posted them up on their windows, and they said, "We support the American people." And there was a huge outpouring of support after September 11th, and that was just such a historic moment and a meaningful moment to me to feel like I was a citizen of the world and I was taking part in that. But yeah, being in Italy, it taught me how to communicate across cultures, how to be flexible, how to adapt, how to appreciate and respect a culture that was different from our own, which has been hugely immensely helpful in the working world. living in Italy and just befriending a lot of Italians really helped me appreciate not only the differences in the cultures, but also the similarities across cultures. And it helped me, it was also a humbling experience. As Andrew said, learning language isn't easy, it takes practice, it's hard. But in order to learn anything, you've got to humble yourself and realize that there's a lot you don't know. There's always going to be something you don't know, and to be open to learning what you don't know. Let's see. So I would say that I definitely loved learning Italian at Colby. It enriched my study abroad experience. It helped me be a better communicator. I also want to say that it enriched my studies of international studies and global studies at Colby. I just fell in love with Italian. I learned the culture, I learned film, I learned about the history, and it just fueled my desire to want to learn more and do better. And so because of that, I excelled academically, which helped me get into grad school and helped me get a job. And it was just a virtuous cycle. So for any of you who are studying language and there are naysayers that say, oh, that's impractical, don't do it, if you really are passionate about something and you just throw yourself into it, you're going to excel. And when you apply for a job, employers are going to see that, and they're going to, especially in the nonprofit sector, you've got to have a core set of competencies and skills, but the nonprofit sector is looking for people who are passionate, who are going to take initiative, who are going to be entrepreneurial, and who are mission-oriented, and who are going to really just throw themselves into something and drive themselves forward because of their passion for the subject. Kind of jumping around here, but so learning a language fueled my studies here at Colby, but it also helped me kind of learn how to learn. And this might sound odd, but in the nonprofit sector, I've worked for organizations whose missions are to end global poverty and to help working families and improve American diplomacy and facilitate international trade. And there's not one right answer or one textbook or one report that's going to tell you the answer. There are many proposals and many different points of view, and I think that the gift of a liberal arts education is to be able to understand the issues and to be comfortable with ambiguity and to facilitate dialogue and to find common ground and move forward. And I think that's what a liberal arts education gives you. And I think that a lot of folks in the workforce aren't comfortable with that, and they want a clean, nice answer. Which in some fields you may be able to have that, but if you're dealing with really complex social and economic issues, you're gonna need to be able to learn an issue, understand problems, and try to cut through the noise and find a path forward. So I think that's definitely a gift that Colby has given me. In terms of the tangible things that you can do to complement your academic studies, folks here have mentioned internships. Definitely pursue an internship if you are able to at Colby or at grad school. It helps you gain practical skills and a network. I want to just emphasize that building a network in your field is hugely and immensely important. Happy to talk to any of you who are interested in the nonprofit sector after this. A school name and a degree name definitely looks good on a resume, but having a network is very, very important. Volunteering, and I'm not saying this just because I work for Points of Light, but volunteering can be a powerful way to build your skill sets and build your network. The Corporation for National and Community Service did research, and they showed that volunteers are 27% more likely to find a job than non-volunteers. So whether that means volunteering at your local food bank or using your skills and being a skills-based volunteer, definitely do it because you can build your resume, you can build skills, you can make connections, and it just benefits your community. It's great. Extracurriculars too are really important. So if you go to grad school or even here at Colby, try to find something that when I was at AU, I volunteered to work at our school as Graduate Student Journal of International Affairs called Swords and Plowshares. And so my first year I was the managing director, and then the second year I was the editor-in-chief. And it was a great exercise in organization and leadership. I got to really network with the dean's office and other students. Of course, I put it on my resume, but it was a great way to complement my academic studies in grad school. So if you have an opportunity, definitely take that up. And also, again, I'll end by saying choose your passion. Don't let what you think is practical or just because you think you're going to get a lot of money or something after college kind of guide and dictate what you study. Choose your passion because at the end of the day, that's really going to be the only thing that drives your motivation and drives your ability to succeed. And I'll just jump in. I would say when I studied abroad, I definitely took advantage of opportunities to travel outside of Italy, and I befriended the Italian language assistant who was at the time here, so that when I went abroad, she actually invited me to her house in Siena, and she introduced me to her family and her friends, and it really would just enrich the whole experience because I really felt like I connected with the local community. One thing that I wish I had done better actually is I really prepared going to Italy. In terms of the language and just psychologically preparing myself to study abroad, I had no plan to come back. I mean, I knew I was going to come back, but I actually had reverse culture shock. And because I threw myself into Italy, and then when I came back, it was like suffering loss. And it was really actually very hard for me to transition back. So I would just say, think of having an exit strategy, or think of ways that you can actually make your time back at Colby really, surround yourself with friends, or take really good classes that you're excited about to make the transition easier.
I mean, I've been thinking back. I probably don't have a funny, story, but I did live with a host mother, and she knew no English at all, and so I really had to communicate with her through my Italian. And I just formed a really meaningful relationship with her in terms of practicing my Italian. She would try to speak back in English, and at the end of the whole experience, she said, I call her my mom Italiana, so she's my Italian mother. And after my study abroad experience, I wrote to her. I was her pen pal for like 5 years, and it just